welcome to this introduction to MIDI Guitar 3, and I'm going to talk about infinite sustain and the three functions in the sustain module in MIDI Guitar 3. So it's high time, I think, to start focusing on some of the stuff that is new for this. To begin with, what is MIDI Guitar 3? It's the follow-up to MIDI Guitar 2 that was, in my view, the software solution for anybody that wanted to use MIDI guitar. While not perfect, I think it was a really brilliant piece of software that worked for a good amount of stuff. The version 3 will blow the rest of the stuff out of the water, because as a MIDI guitarist, you want to use your own stuff. You want to use your own guitar. It's really good tracking. You have MPE, a special implementation for CC74 via brightness. I want to focus on one particular aspect in this video, and I want to focus on the infinite sustain. And sustain has been sort of the holy grail for MIDI guitar for a long time, I think. And with MIDI Guitar 3, you have access to those aspects of infinite sustain that you really had in, say, the Synth or in the GR500. What strategies did we use to get past this lack of sustain that were part of the whole setup for so many years? I know I used, say, an eBow to begin with. I also used a Sustainic. It's a sustainer pickup in my guitar. It's a combined normal pickup with a magnetic functions that sustains the note in the same way as the eBow did, but this is for all the strings at once. So in broad strokes, why didn't any of these solutions work for MIDI guitar? If we take the eBow as a representative of all these magnetic solutions, this is what it sounds like when you use it with no MIDI connected to it. If you hear this string buzz, you can almost sense where it's going wrong. So I'm going to use a trumpet now to demonstrate two of the problems that I think we have with mechanically or artificially sustaining notes with some sort of magnetic device. I'll just pick a note here. Every time I lose connection with the magnetic force pulling this, I get this extra onset and this extra transient, as if I was picking the note once again. And this is one of the problems. You don't want to have anxiety over whether or not this is gonna catch on and start vibrating the strings, if the strings are going to sort of bump against the frets, because the strings are vibrating more than if you just pick it and have the normal pickups, which also are magnetic, by the way. This extra magnetic force is going to have the strings vibrate also towards the other fret. And the second problem is, if I engage emphasis on the harmonic part with an eBow, this happens. I might get it to start vibrating, but then it goes into emphasizing the overtones and perhaps an octave above the intended note, and this is not what I'm looking for. So there are a lot of insecurities, and there are a lot of stuff that might happen if you use these kinds of magnetic devices to try to prolong sustain mechanically. I tried with the Moog Guitar. Which is a dedicated magnetic microphone setup, but it also has these filters, and it has a lot of emphasis on the harmonic side of this magnetic setup, and that jumbles things up for the MIDI guitar interpretation. So let's look at the sustain function in MIDI Guitar 3 to begin with. The sustain module and the 3 functions that are therein. So here I have a patch. Any guitar tone or guitar tones have this quality, this velocity profile where it's beginning loud and tapers off, and this is how guitar tones work. It's actually the same thing for a piano. It also has a high transient and dies out, but it takes a little longer. It has more time to sort of ring out. It's not necessarily so that we want these properties to follow into our playing when it comes to synths and stuff. I don't necessarily want my synth to have these velocity profiles. So for that reason, we are looking at how to at least start a sound but ignoring the velocity profile. For this first example, I want to use the sustain pedal as I've always done, and that's a hold function. It's called Freeze Chord in MIDI Guitar 3 right now. It's the steel string guitar that is frozen, so that I have something to play over. So this jazz guitar is also actually a MIDI guitar, so both of these guitars are virtual instruments, multi-patches in Kontakt, so these are MPE in the sense that it's polyphonic bends involved, so they are acting as real guitars in that sense. And this is one of the parts that have been missing for so long with guitar libraries. We're so used to have guitar sounds fed to us that we're forgetting about these imperfections. Guitar chords are seldom all that perfect. There is always some sort of tension. And I think this is part of the beauty of guitar playing. I'm so happy that we have the ability to pass this along nowadays in the instruments, and this is all due to MPE, that I can have every note bend accordingly. So I have one note that is bending and one that is not. Since I'm playing a guitar and playing a virtual guitar, this translates to the velocity profile that I'm talking about actually working for this instrument. It wouldn't be longer anyway, because these instruments aren't written as instruments that could be sort of prolonged forever. Even if I'm using a sustained note, these instruments' velocity profiles would eventually end anyway. So I would say that these match perfectly. Let's go for another patch. Yeah. So here I want to use a synth, and this synth has this undulating quality, so I wouldn't want it to die out as the note dies out from where I'm playing it. So I don't want a decaying velocity or volume on it. I want the volume to be constant, steadily be feeding it. So here I have a sustain pedal now. Every sort of extra function that I want, I just go into chain and look. In MIDI Machines I'll find dynamics tool, and it's a sustain tool and transposer and modulators and stuff. I'll go over all of these in due time, but in this case I'm looking for a sustain, which I already have here on my second chain. I can arrange these chains in different rows depending on how I want to view these. So now I'm looking at this purple chain here, because here's where I have my synths. I have Oddity 3 from Gforce. So down here I have my pedal connected already. It's really easy to connect stuff, and this is part of the beauty of MIDI Guitar 3. So I'm turning the sustain function on and off with this pedal. So what will happen if I strike a chord now with my infinite sustain function on here? I'm not going to sit here for half an hour to show you that this will go on. This will go on for as long as I want it to. The mixer here is of course for the different rows or the different chains. So the beauty of this particular setup of sustain, of infinite sustain, is it will change as I strike a new chord. And if I sort of dampen it correctly, I can remove my hands and I'm free to do whatever till the next chord or next note. But if I were to bump into another note, this will take over. So it's the safest way to use these is of course to keep your hands pressing the chord. This way I can have a 6-string chord ringing forever if I want to. And this is almost like the hold function. The difference is I have access to the new chord directly without having to step on any pedal or anything. So if I want to use another instrument together with this, okay, so now the singer want to have 5 minutes to talk about whatever. Sure. You give him 5 minutes. And you get the sign to play on. Right, next chord. This is the infinite sustain function in MIDI Guitar 3. We have 2 other ways of using this as well. So if I click on this, I have this freeze chord that I showed you in the guitar patch. With this patch it works similarly. I'm freezing a chord and playing over it. So Personally, I like this because I think I have great control over what I'm playing over, but it's a matter of taste and it's a matter of functionality. What are you going to use this for? Most of the time you won't be needing this pedal anyway because you have so long sustain in the actual software. I mean, but here you hear the guitar volume profile. It tapers off rather quickly, I would say. It's not super fast or anything. I mean, it's a considerable amount of time and it's a considerable sustain, especially if you compare it to whatever has come before this. But if you want this infinite sustain, you have this other character, this steady velocity into the next chord. So it's more of a chord legato stuff. Every note will ring on until you play the next note. So the third thing is, of course, a traditional piano style sustain. I think it's best to showcase on a piano actually. So okay, so we have sustain pedals on these already. If I turn this into a piano style sustain, you hear what happens. The bass part of the piano has this sustain part, something that you wouldn't be able to do in a traditional piano. So let's be fair and set it up to the similar function in the high part. You can set the time you want, of course. But now you have these three functions in the sustain pedal in MIDI Guitar 3 that you can use. Infinite sustain, which should be of joy to most of you. What's not to like about this? Think about it. This is one of the functionalities in MIDI Guitar, in the new MIDI Guitar 3. So another thing that I want to point to is traditionally in MIDI guitar, it has been like this, at least in MIDI Guitar 2, I felt like this was an issue. I struck a chord and pressed the sustain pedal, and as soon as I took my hand off the strings, you got the pitch bend information from pressing the strings to not pressing the strings would translate even if I had pressed the pedal, which was sort of annoying. Now I can. This is perfect because I can also, since we have MPE, I can get freeze on the weirdest chords and it stays that way. That wouldn't have been a possibility in MIDI Guitar 2. So something like this. I mean, it sounds like a car crash. but it's very, very useful, I think, especially for some, if you want to use it for some strange or unsettling soundscapes. So if I want to pause this now, I want to be able to do something else, play another thing on a synth or whatever. When I come back to this and release the freeze chord, this will ring on until I actually strike a new chord. I can pause, go do something else, play some drums, and release it. These are the three functions of the sustain module in MIDI Guitar 3. I will probably go on with some other module quite soon, but there are so much stuff to look forward to with this. So I'm really, really happy that you guys are getting it as well. So bye for now and see you later.